welcome to another episode of Founder Exchange. I'm your host, Dibu, and I'm the founder and CEO of Beta. My guest today is Jessica Young, the founder of Bubble, a transparent marketplace for emerging food and CPG brands. Welcome, Jessica.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So tell me, um, what is Bubble all about?
We are all about clean label health foods that are shipped directly from the people who make them to your doorstep. So we're really trying to make it easy for both customers to find, discover, access, some of the most amazing, innovative health food brands of our time, and make it really easy for brands to reach customers looking for those products, which really up until this point, has been kept to a very local level. Companies that or food brands that are selling at local farmers markets, attempting to, get on Shopify and try to advertise to customers. But on their own, it's really, really tough or really expensive. And so we're doing that all under one roof at Bubble. And we sort of are new kids on the block, but we have a lot coming down the pipeline that we're excited about.
And so you were previously working in food in a bunch of different capacity over time. You were a chef at a Michelin, one of the best restaurants in New York City, and you worked at a couple of emerging food tech and distribution companies. Tell us about that experience and what kind of gave you the idea for Bubble.
Yeah, it's a journey, right? It's all about the journey, not necessarily the destination. um, I'm really passionate about food systems at large. And I'm all about good and quality food. So I started my career in fine dining, behind the stove. Went to culinary school, worked my way around different, amazing kitchens in the city. And then I think caught, which, many people do, the startup bug. When I saw the wave come through New York City with the Blue Aprons and Hello Freshes of the world. And I really kind of took a look and I was like, okay, at that point as a turning point in my career, like, hey, I'm either going to level up and go to Europe and do the Europe Michelin circuit, or, I think what's going on here is actually pretty historic. The way people are buying, engaging with food online with meal kits, I thought had many other applications, and it was something I wanted to get involved in. And so I decided to jump in and was a part of a few concepts in New York, a fast casual concept called Hugh Kitchen, which was starting up and made a play for CPG with their own product lines. And then couple meal kit and frozen food companies. And then eventually met the founder of what is now Daily Harvest at her kitchen table, jumped on as employee number one, and over the next few years was head of product and operations, so responsible for everything from sourcing the fruits and vegetables that end up in those products to actually producing those products to getting it out the door, which is not necessarily the easiest thing in frozen food. So and then kind of through that company, saw a really big hole in the food space. What we were doing at Daily Harvest was great. We were building a brand online for a frozen food company. We weren't going behind the dreaded glass door of the grocery store, which is kind of the kiss of death for a lot of brands, right? To not only, compete there, but see any kind of sell through. That's really reserved for a lot of the big frozen food companies. And so we were doing that online with D2C, creating a subscription service and launching more products into that pipeline. And during that time, I started getting hit up by a lot of friends in the food community. I sit on Chobani's food incubator and do a lot within innovation in food, kind of in separate communities. And saw a really big, question mark, which is all these companies kind of coming to me saying, "Hey, I want to do that with my food brand. How can I just ship direct to consumer? How do I make my Shopify store better?" And what they didn't have an understanding of was the real model behind that and how to make user acquisition work for their individual brands. And I didn't understand why there wasn't an application in health food and clean label foods, which is the fastest growing CPG category. But there are what I call these off Amazon marketplaces and experiences that were doing that. You're in electronics, right? Newegg for electronics, Etsy for handmade goods, Chewy for pet food goods. Why is there nothing for these products that I am so passionate about? I've dedicated, my career now to seeing more of on the shelf or in people's pantries across the US. And so I stepped out to launch Bubble, which is that place.
Right. And I have a cousin who I mentioned this to you, and she has she had started out as a raw energy bar company, and she actually sold in one of the establishments that you worked at. And I remember every time I talked to her, she'd be trialing like 6 Whole Foods or 18 Whole Foods in a regional area, and um, I, I know from having a relationship with her that it's extremely difficult to get distribution as a startup food company. Why is it so hard? Like what was the insight that what's the insight that kind of drives your business?
Yeah, there are a few dynamics at work within food, like you said, with distribution. So coming from the food brand itself, typically you have to get the meeting, which could take a while. In summary, it's a very long tail. So you have to get the meeting. You have to drop into a few stores regionally. You have to then see sales in those few stores to then get to like a national level. So
People
let's
don't know
say
this, right? Because the buying approach from big retailers is, or at least Whole Foods up until recently was very decentralized, right? So you had to kind of approach them at a sometimes even like store by store, like market by market level, right?
store by store, market by market, you have to see sales there to even kind of get to that next level. So let's say your cousin's health food bar, she's approaching Minneapolis Whole Foods and gets in. Let's say her bar doesn't really sell there because it's not the market for her bar. She's not going to get picked up by the rest. But if she had started, let's say, with like San Francisco Whole Foods or New York's Whole Foods, she may have seen some more pickup in those markets. And so what kind of is missing is a more insightful approach to bring a product to market within food. And that's what Bubble does. So we first and foremost have a taste test. I could never put my name on anything that
Do you
didn't
do
have
all the
some
taste
good food
tests
involved.
personally?
I'm still, yes, involved in anything that hits Bubble. But it's a team effort. So there's a few things that are not to my taste necessarily, but I know that it'll fit someone else's. I definitely have a professionally trained palate to kind of know.
Right.
And so, yeah, everything on Bubble does get taste tested. We won't put anything up that will reflect badly on anyone else's product, right? It's really about like this mass kind of communal aspect to what we're building. And so taste tested, we verify that everything has clean label. We have a whole set of standards that goes through our Bubble approval process to get like a nice stamp of approval. And then brands are allowed to kind of sell on the platform and grow. And our goal is that they drop into a nationally targeted, curated audience. They can get a lot of insights and then go to the correct Whole Foods one day and see some brick and mortar sales and grow their business. We're fully aware, as it should be, that if you're growing a CPG brand, whether you're in beauty, pet food, human food, that it's not necessarily about one main channel. If you're going to grow your business to a certain level, that you need kind of an omni-channel approach. We just believe that you should start with a platform like Bubble and then grow from there, because it's, again, just more insightful. You don't have to sink a lot of money into inventory, minimum order quantities, and things like that.
Right. And I'm guessing we do this a lot of beta as well. You're trying to avoid the trap of a brand locating themselves in the wrong store, wrong location for their product, and then having, when the buyer at some other location is asking how that went, you can't really provide any kind of good results, and that creates this negative cycle. So entrepreneurs use Bubble to kind of validate and test at a more targeted level to generate interesting data they can provide to other buyers. Is that something you see a lot of?
Yeah, that's something we're building more to in the next, few months actually at Bubble. But it's asked for as like kind of the number one, item from brands is like, what more can I get how I have a kale chip company. How am I selling against other kale chips, against
Right.
chips, against the entire snack vertical, right? How am I ranking? What can I do better? How do I increase my sales? So we're doing things and thinking forward to how to actually guide a company to maybe change their packaging, right? What insights can we give someone to say, hey, just based on how your product looks, because as we know within e-commerce, especially within food, you're not necessarily smelling the food before you try. You're not at a restaurant and someone's walking by with the plate and you're like, ooh, I want that. You're competing with visual and how something sounds with a product description. Is it, does it have a, for Amazon, a Prime badge on it? Is it top ranked, a bestseller, things like that? And so, we want to be a bit smarter and then pass it on to the brand so they can make better decisions to compete on a virtual shelf, and then hopefully one day, do better in a market.
Yeah. Do you see yourself? I know you've mentioned publicly that you're not a retailer, you're a marketplace. But out of curiosity, do you see yourself as in 10, 15 years um, being a replacement for Amazon Whole Foods or a replacement for a local store, or do you see yourself as as like a tool that the brand uses to build their distribution and their capabilities across a number of places?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think when we look at the value we provide to both brands and customers, we want to deepen that as we grow. And so I think if value that value chain for brands kind of dictates us, or for customers around, hey, I want these products on demand. Can I get all this stuff within an hour? Can I get some of the top moving products on Bubble in an hour? For both brands and customers, that's something we would do. But we really let our customers and brands kind of drive that, actually, which is nice. We don't want to force something that doesn't exist. We're pretty agile when it comes to expanding in the future kind of logistics. Has become my kind of core, outside of cooking and food, core competency. So we definitely have our eyes on some of those programs moving forward.
Right. And typically, do you envision Bubble as, I mean, maybe give me like a percentage of how you see Bubble. Is it, what percentage of it is discovery for customers of things they didn't know they needed versus coming here for things that you do need and you want a reliable, or in your case you have like subscriptions available for your product, or it's like a transactional tool for customers?
Yeah, I would say Bubble today is predominantly discovery based. And we have a very, very solid repeat user base. I can share some of our numbers that we're proud of. A little over, last quarter, half of our overall shipments out the door were from repeat users. And so that community is very, very sticky with us. Our average time to second order, so once someone discovers Bubble and they repeat purchase, is 32 days. And that's not because they're opting into a subscription item. That's them just coming back and
Right.
seeing what's new, what's happening. So it's very
Are they
discovery
typically
based.
buying something different the second time, you find?
Yeah, it's interesting. We very much see with repeat users what we call like discovery stock up cadence, and it's back and forth. So orders 1, 3, 5 are very much discovery, kind of all over the place. What's new on Bubble? And orders 2, 4, 6 are very much stock up. So high volume of something that was in that previous order they're stocking up on, and then let's say like 1 or 2 other things that they're finding along
Right.
the way to try.
Makes sense. I
Yeah.
probably brought your average time to returning customer down very low. 'Cause this morning, you might have seen my orders. I placed an order for myself, and like 10 minutes later, I placed a second order for my mom for Mother's Day.
Yeah.
So the other thing that we haven't really touched on is transparent supply chain. I mean, how far do you take that? Are you thinking all the way down to the farm and how they treat their workers and how they grow their crops, or does it kind of stop at what the company shares with you?
Yeah, so we actually do require that for some products on Bubble. So it's really case by case with, everyone has to have food safety certifications on file. we've been called the Etsy of health food in some press articles. And while that's amazing to be compared to Etsy, really like legacy marketplace business, we don't
You're
necessarily
not
get the
made in someone's home
conversation.
kitchen, right? Typically.
Exactly. It's not some grandma with like Chex Mix, listing product and selling it. We are not that homegrown. And so, that's sort of de facto. We have standards around food safety certifications, things like that. But case by case will actually require additional certification if something's not adding up, or we want to look into, let's say, individually sourced products that are like repackaged, let's say like individual dried fruits or flowers and things like that, where they're sourcing. So individual like COAs, we do require. But yeah, so case by case, on the supply chain front.
Got it. And you're today only carrying shelf stable products that can exist for at least 6 months. What is the big obstacle to kind of doing more perishable or even fresh foods in the future?
Yeah. So, up until recently, we were a pretty tiny team of three, myself and two other people. We are now a team of six. And so with that, we're able to actually like build out a lot more of what we have been aiming to do for the past few years, which is great to like see everything come to life really now. So I would say the big hurdle there, would be just getting brands online. So we have a pretty hefty wait list right now. We haven't onboarded new brands in a minute, because we're actually about to roll out for brands interested in selling on Bubble a self-serve platform. So lots of upgrades to the dashboard they see to operate their business on Bubble, plug in inventory, list their product, gain insights, things like that. So
So typically,
that
most of the brands you work with, they're already selling direct somewhere else, either through their own site or Instagram when they come to you, or do they ever come to you before they have any event infrastructure?
Yeah, it's a mix. So a lot have something set up. They're a little bit more savvy. They're selling through Facebook shopping and things. But more and more as we have a more cemented reputation in food, they're coming to us first. They're really looking for us as like a launch partner, which we love and we want to do more of. Really catch them at that first. I'm coming to market. What do I do? We want to really help brands come to market, and again, do it the right way. Then sink a ton of money in paid advertising off on their own, or just kind of do it in an upside down way. So we're really working towards getting that squared away, and then doing some fixes on the consumer facing experience, just so again, once we kind of open that up, we're going to have a pretty massive inventory. One of our I wouldn't say competitors, they kind of do something different, but they're in terms of selling food online, it's healthy. Thrive Market, they have an inventory of about 5,000 products. By the end of this year, Bubble will have an inventory far beyond that. And so with that, right, it becomes an element, like you said, of discovery. How do I, oh my gosh, there's this big inventory. How do I find what I'm looking for? So we want to roll some of those fixes out so it's easier for customers to find within Bubble, their own little bubble of what they're looking for. And then we're going to look at kind of blowing out that service beyond that. So
Was that the kind of
like you
thinking
mentioned,
behind the name? Was to that eventually you have a lot of people that have different, specific dietary restrictions or concerns, and they'd be able to kind of craft their own personalized grocery store?
yeah, exactly. So yeah, within this universe of things that we have vetted to be amazing, we've put them on a national platform. Okay, now drill down and find what you're looking for. Find things that you love, you want in your household, and get them on repeat. Right? I love this. Eventually, local meat company in my region. I'm going to supply and eat that. We really believe that the future of food is built on an independent food system that can come together, not one big food company kind of taking over, across all verticals, on that within food. So, we're building towards that.
Sure. I've noticed you also do a lot of education for food brands, and probably personally as well. You probably coach and mentor a lot of startups in the space. What are the mistakes that you see over and over again that startup food companies kind of face?
That's a great question. We see a lot of sort of like rebrand ISIS brands in food for some reason, especially when they're in their first year or two, continually rebrand, which we get, right? You want to get something to market. It's an amazing product that someone at some point told you, hey, that's really good. You should bottle and sell that. And that's kind of how people get into it. Or they're really passionate, couldn't find something on the shelf that they wanted. So you'll hear that story a lot in food, which is great. And then they make the label themselves, or maybe their friend who's a graphic designer sticks a label on a gusseted bag and gets it into the world, which is amazing. But for some reason, food founders decide to like rebrand over and over and over again, even though it doesn't actually help them move the needle. And so we see that a lot with newer brands that hit bubble, and they're making these decisions based on their personal preference or like every other friend. Now that it's in the world, they get really sensitive about what that is, and they take that feedback, and it becomes this crazy back and forth for them. And so, you know, I kind of wish that brands would slow down and don't take I think this is true for like all companies, just don't listen to so many opinions for a while. Just get it out there and work on sales. And is the what's inside the product really good? And is your supply chain sound? Are you making money on that product? Things like that. And then, the brand will come, and you can kind of pay for better branding and go through that with more of a professional down the road. So we see that. Yeah, and I would say again, pointing to brands, not necessarily focusing on the nuts and bolts and maybe like the boring stuff. Again, the distribution, the sales, the supply chain, the margins, are they scalable? Is the like thoughtfully sourced macadamia farm who only can give you a pound per year of macadamia nuts gonna do it for you, or do you need to find like
Right.
5 of those, and start lining that up, things like that. Because again, and then again, which is a great problem to have, you might start selling and then you just run out of your product because you didn't kind of think ahead to, a couple more steps, which
Right.
again, always plan for the best there. So
Yeah.
yeah, we see brands, get caught up in rebranding. They don't think about the kind of boring pieces, and so they can't fulfill orders. No one's really managing inventory. They're not thinking about the supply chain, and so they'll stock out kind of indefinitely. And we're like, what's going on? We're selling a lot of your product.
Right.
What's up over there? How can we help? So
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you find that's usually not a financial issue? That's some other supply chain related thing?
Yeah, and it's not necessarily a financial thing. So, yeah, it's yeah, I would say people resources or supply chain, on that side.
How big is the average, in terms of team size, how big is the average brand that sells on Bubble?
We don't track team size. We know, I would say, company revenue, and a lot of food brands kind of operate differently. But the average uh, bubble brand is sub 500,000 per year in revenue.
So
Yeah, so
probably
small.
like 1, 2, 3 people, and
Yeah,
maybe a team of a lot of contractors or other help.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, um, in terms of, actually, like, how many food companies are there, you think, in the US or in the world? It must be a lot. I would think hundreds of thousands, but maybe,
Yeah, in the US alone.
yeah,
Yeah, hundreds of
yeah,
thousands. Yeah.
yeah. It's pretty easy to start, relative to other types of companies. I know, like our customers at Beta, our brand customers, typically venture funded, almost always, because bringing even a basic technology product to market is really expensive and it requires very complicated supply chain mechanics.
Mhm.
But like kind of, down the line, apparel, I think food is probably the easiest to start because you can, I'm, I'm pretty sure most people, like you said, have an idea for a recipe or some new concoction of theirs. And um, I mean, what are the typical startup costs for a new food company? I actually don't know, but I can't imagine it's too much.
Yeah, it's usually distribution related. So if you're looking to start up a company, go national right away, you've got suppliers abroad, you're going to import, which I've seen out the gates and also been a part of. But the typical person who's starting regionally, they want to sell it at their local green market, maybe take a meeting with the local Whole Foods if there's even one around. Um, is first inventory run. And again, what's nice about Bubble is we have no minimum order quantities. And so a brand can put up 10 products, test a new flavor, get some insights back, and then make moves from there. When you go into retailers, they're setting that you need barcodes, you need to prove, you have to have all your paperwork in line. You're signing contracts that deal with buyback clauses. So if you have your product sell into a grocery store, but it doesn't sell by its expiration date, you need to buy that product back,
Yeah.
which is not good for your books. So yeah, food is a very tricky animal. But yeah, so that's why you'll see, even in the shift to and why we're swooping in on the space we are, lots of brands start up, they're doing things properly, but they're going online, they're selling it through Facebook Marketplace, they're figuring out Shopify and trying to run Facebook ads because you don't have to deal with all of that. But it's not the
Do
most,
you think it's become more expensive though to start a food company? Because I can't imagine sometimes when I order from um, I don't know, I'll order like a new type of canned beverage, sparkling water, which I do quite often. I just sit there thinking, I don't know how they're making money on this because I'm buying a couple of units and there's a shipping cost, and I don't know, I'm sure the supply chain for that is more complicated, um, and plus there's all these costs I think in marketing that maybe historically were taken on by a retailer. I mean, are the margins being compressed, but the kind of quantity of different companies making things has expanded,
I think
or
it's
is it still like a
shifted,
high
right?
margin business?
It's still, yeah, I wouldn't say, I think that budget has shifted. So maybe someone's paying for a Facebook ad or, dealing with a distribution center or something, if they're even at that level, or they have, their daughter packing the box and it's coming out from their garage, even though they produced it in a food safe facility, but packaged and shipped, you know, yeah, like when you're in a typical grocery store, part of sometimes signing is, brand, the grocery store may not have faith in your sell through. And they're like, okay, you can come on the shelf, but you need to pay for shelf space. You have to lock into certain samplings per quarter. And so there's a lot of fees that kind of are associated with selling in some of the larger retailers.
Okay, well, last question. Because I'm going to place another order with you tonight. What are the 5
Yes.
products that I need to try that are your favorites right now?
Oh, okay. Oh my gosh, playing favorites. Do people ever ask you this with beta? This is like dangerous
Absolutely, all the
territory.
time, constantly. No, number one, it's like, what's like, oh, I know everything you carry is cool, but like, gonna pick one thing what would it be? So yeah, I always have an answer to that somewhere in my head. Depends on budget, right? But in our case, but
Yeah.
yeah, if budget's not an issue, tell me, what are you thinking?
So I eat personally oatmeal or smoothie bowl every morning. I'm pretty like robotic with how I start my day, just so I don't have to think about it. But there is a great oatmeal company that actually incorporates flaxseed and chia seed, which is great for digestion to kick off your morning. They do it all for you. It's like actually something I would make for myself, like oatmeal, and I put a little flax and chia on top for some crunch. But they do this all in one. And it also is sort of like a Tom Shoes of oatmeal. You buy one, they give one. So there's a social impact element to that called Soulful, which is a cute name. They just hit
Just add
our
water.
site. Just add water. Yeah, I mean, some people like milk or something creamy. I personally just add water, microwave for a minute and 30 seconds, and it's good to go. Half a cup of that every morning. And so, yeah, I'm really into the Soulful mix, and I feel obviously good about buying one, and they give one, and have a great team over there. I love these baking mixes. So I don't know. This was pretty big last year when this product hit bubble during quarantine because everyone was home and baking. They're brand based out of Hawaii, and they use upcycled grains, so things that come off of production lines, like let's say oats that were from oat milk production and things like that. So upcycled ingredients called okina. So they have like a carrot and bread mix. They have a zucchini mix, so there's lots of vegetables within the baked item. So
So it's like a
okina
kit
mixes.
that you put together and you bake a
Yeah,
bread at home.
I believe so. They're all vegan. I think it's optional
Nice.
to add an egg, and it's applesauce. To the wet ingredients that you would add in are applesauce and some nut milk, I believe, and then stir and bake. So super easy, as well. Okay, 5. I You told me you were gonna ask me this too, just not to cheat, but you did, and I did not like prepare. Okina. Oh, I love ProMix's. They're a protein company that they have a few products on Bubble. They're adding a lot more. They have like 40 SKUs or something. They have a pretty big inventory, all clean protein. So they have vegan. They also have whey based items. They have collagens, all that, but like very, very thoughtfully sourced. There's a reason why you don't see a ton of vitamin supplements, proteins on Bubble, where you kind of see mass in like a GNC. We are extremely picky with the supply chains in this category. There's a
Yeah,
lot of dirty stuff that happens in that world,
yeah,
and so ProMix is one of the only clean, also great tasting, right? Because that's part of our process. So ProMix actually has a product. So their proteins are amazing. They have great vegan proteins that I'm a fan of. I'm pretty plant based, but they have they're not plant based. They use the whey protein. They puff them up, and so they're like these uh, Rice Krispie treats, but they use protein puffed whey protein. No sugar because that's part of Bubble as well. We don't accept anything that has refined sugars in the products.
mm,
So their version of their Rice Krispie treats are awesome. So anyone that has like kids or you want something sweet or you're kind of a kid yourself like me, those are highly recommended. But
yeah.
like great for protein. So you can actually like eat one and hit it after your workout because there's that much protein in it. Okay, that's 3. I This is like some self. We make a great product in house that we drop every now and then called Hella, and that is a vegan Nutella that only has 3 ingredients because I
Yeah.
can't not make food. So we actually do
Yummy.
have an in-house product we drop every now and then, which also has one incredible wait list. So that we hit up when we drop the product, but it only has cacao, hazelnut, and coconut sugar, a little bit of coconut sugar for sweetness. So we drop Hella every now and then, which I highly recommend. And what else is really good? What kind of products are in your pantry that maybe aren't the
So,
healthiest that you're looking for a
oh,
swap
good
on?
question. Uh, Probably I shouldn't say this because it's just, but probably cereal. Like my
Okay.
parents never got me unhealthy cereal growing up. I always got the stuff from Whole Foods or I don't know if that was healthy either, but because I don't live with my parents anymore, I buy like cinnamon toast crunch and like really stuff that's really bad for you. But I'm addicted. What do you have for
Okay.
cereal?
Okay. So we kind of did the oatmeal thing, but another really great company that goes back in my career, which we were talking about, Hugh Kitchen days. This woman was actually someone who was on the shelves then. So it's cool to be working with her again because she makes such amazing products. She actually developed these products for her son who has autism and couldn't have tons of refined sugars in his diet or gluten. So she makes these granolas with gluten-free oats and uses either coconut or maple sugar. So very low glycemic, which are things that we allow on Bubble. But her whole line is amazing. The company's name is Healing Home Foods, starting there. And then she has a bunch of different granolas. I personally, it's kind of a tie between her almond butter chunk, and it's like that nice roasty granola flavor, not the like dry, bland oat flavor,
Mhm.
like very roasted kind of flavor. So her almond butter or her cashew crunch is really good. It's like coconut cashew, I believe, is the flavor. Really good. I also highly recommend her pizza thins that
Okay.
are made with like nuts and have a pizza flavor. They're awesome. I also love our pilly nuts from. Oh my god, I'm gonna have to look. Have you ever had a pilly nut?
I don't know what that is.
Okay, it's huge in the paleo keto
Okay.
community, very high fat nut. It's like on another playing field than macadamia nuts. They taste like butter, but they're nuts.
Mhm.
They're really big in the Philippines. So this brand Pure Traditions imports them, and then he'll put like very clean label like spices on them. So he has like a chili garlic, a ranch. He also has a sweet one, like an apple cinnamon. So highly recommend the Pure Traditions Pilly nuts as well.
Awesome.
More.
Perfect list. Well, I'm never doing this again at lunchtime. I'm actually starving, and I need all of these things right now. So thank you so much, Jessica. It was wonderful to have you on the show. You can check out all of the amazing selection and healthy foods in every category at bubblegoods.com. Thanks again.